I was there. People keep asking me to tell it, and every time I do, I leave something out because there is too much. So this time I'll try to put it all down. The whole thing. From the moment the small gray ship came through the gate to the moment the laughing stopped. And it did stop. All of it. Every kind of laughing there is in this galaxy, and believe me, there are many kinds. My name doesn't matter much. I was a junior attaché back then, third clerk to Elder Vaso of the Inari, which is a fancy way of saying I carried his cushions and refilled his water and stood very still against the wall while my betters decided the fate of worlds. I was young. I thought I understood things. I didn't understand anything yet. Let me set it for you, the way it actually was. The council chamber on Uliath Prime is the most beautiful room ever built. I still believe that, even now. It's carved out of a single piece of living crystal, a mountain that took the Sethic monks 400 of their long years to hollow and shape, and when the morning light comes through the high windows, it does something to the air. It scatters. The whole room fills with soft drifting color, gold and rose and a pale green that has no name in any language I know. People who go there for the first time often weep just from the light. I did the first day. I wasn't ashamed of it. Everyone does. The chamber holds the Concord of 12 peoples. 12 seats, 12 banners, 12 voices that had ruled the settled galaxy for longer than most of their member worlds had been keeping count. The Inari, my people, the Sethic who built the chamber, the Corvani, the Drell, the great slow mossback elders who lived in tanks of warm silt, the Vaka, who are all teeth and old money, 12, and every one of them ancient, every one of them proud. That morning the room was packed. Not just the 12, but their delegations, their advisors, their hangers-on, and the public galleries above, which were full for the first time in years. Word had gotten around. Everyone wanted to see it. The new ones, the humans. You have to understand how funny that word was to people back then. Humans. It was almost a joke before they ever walked in. A young species, and I mean young, barely off their own moon a few centuries, barely past their first true war among the stars, petitioning the conquered for recognition, for a seat at the long table, for a voice. The Vaka delegate, a glittering thing named HFY, had been telling the joke for weeks. The monkeys want a chair, he'd say, clicking his mandibles in that wet way they have. Should we get them a smaller one? Their feet won't reach the floor. And everyone would laugh, the polite, cruel laugh of people who are very sure of where they stand. I laughed too. God help me, I was 22 cycles old and I laughed because everyone else did. So that's the room. Beautiful light, ancient people, a galaxy's worth of pride, and a joke that everyone had already decided was true before the door even opened. The human ship had docked an hour before. I'd seen it on the long screens, and I'll be honest, it made the joke easier. It was small. Smaller than the courier shuttles we send to fetch the mossback elders' medicine. It was gray, this dull battleship gray with no shine to it, and it was patched. That's the word. Patched. There were plates on the hull that didn't match the rest, welded on in a hurry, scarred dark at the edges. One whole section of the lower flank was a different metal entirely, dull copper, like they'd torn it off something else and bolted it on to cover a hole. The drive cowling had a long crack sealed with what looked like, and I swear this is true, what looked like cloth and resin. Like they'd stuffed a wound with a bandage and kept flying. It was, frankly, the ugliest thing I had ever seen come through the Uliath gate. The whole gallery murmured when it appeared on the screens. Someone above me actually said, out loud, "Did they build that or find it?" HFY said, "Found it, in a junkyard on their knees." The laughter went all the way up to the colored ceiling. I want you to hold that ship in your mind. The little gray patched ugly thing. Because later it would be the only thing anyone in that room could think about, and not one of them would be laughing. The door opened. It's a tall door, twice the height of even a Vaka, made for the great processions of the elder peoples, and through it came three humans. That was the whole delegation. 3. The Drell sent 40. The Vaka never traveled with fewer than 100. and the humans sent 3, walking in single file across that vast crystal floor in the colored light, while 1,000 of the oldest, proudest creatures in the galaxy watched and waited to be entertained. 2 of them were young, a man and a woman, maybe in their middle years for their kind, and they wore plain dark uniforms with no decoration, no rank that I could read, no shine. They walked a step behind. Aides, I guessed. Guards, maybe, though they carried no weapons that showed. And in front of them, leading, came the Envoy. I'll never forget the disappointment in the room. You could feel it, like a held breath let out. Because the Envoy of humanity, the voice they'd sent to stand before the Concord of 12 peoples, was an old woman. Old, genuinely old, even for a human. Her hair was gray-white and cut very short. Her face was a map of lines. She walked slowly with the slight stiffness of an aged body, and she used no aids, no float chair, no exoframe, none of the things our own elders use. She just walked, one foot then the other, taking her time, across that enormous floor while the whole galaxy watched and decided she was nothing. She was small. She was tired-looking. And this is the part, she wasn't even looking at the council. She was looking up, at the light, at the drifting color coming through the high windows. She walked the whole long way across the chamber with her face turned up to that famous beautiful light, and there was the smallest smile on her old mouth, like a woman who had walked a very long road and found, at the end of it, one nice thing. HFY leaned to the Drell delegate beside him and said, not quietly at all, "They sent us a grandmother." And the room laughed. It was a big laugh, a warm one even. The cruelest kind, the kind that isn't even angry, just amused, just absolutely certain. It rolled around that crystal chamber and came back doubled. Elders laughed. Aides laughed. The public galleries laughed. Even my own master, Elder Vaso, made the soft Inari sound of mirth, the little 3-note trill, and I'm not proud of this, I trilled along with him. The old woman stopped in the center of the floor, in the speaker's circle, where countless great voices had stood across 10,000 years. And she waited. She didn't shush them. She didn't bristle, didn't draw herself up, didn't do any of the things a proud species would do. She just stood in the center of all that laughter, this small old woman with her face still half turned to the light, and she waited for them to be finished. The way you wait for children to settle, the way you wait for weather to pass. That, I think now, should have been the first warning, that she wasn't embarrassed. She wasn't even impatient. She had clearly been laughed at before by experts, and she had clearly outlived all of them. But none of us read it that way. We just thought she was slow. When the laughter finally thinned out, the speaker of the Concord called the chamber to order. The speaker that year was a Sethic, one of the crystal builders, a tall pale being named Otterith with a voice like a soft bell. The Sethic are the most courteous people in the galaxy, which can be its own kind of cruelty, because they will insult you so beautifully you thank them for it. Otterith rang the order tone and said, in that lovely bell voice, "The Concord recognizes the petitioner of the human worlds. You may state your name and your purpose, small one, and we will hear you. Briefly, if you would. We have weightier matters today." Small one, even the courtesy was a knife. The old woman raised her head, and for the first time she looked at them, at all of them, the 12 seats, slowly, one by one, taking her time, her gray eyes moving along that great curved table of the oldest powers in creation. When she spoke, her voice surprised me. It was low and dry and very steady, an old voice but not a weak one. It carried. She didn't shout. She didn't need to. The chamber was built to carry a whisper to the back of the gallery, and she used that. She spoke softly and everyone heard. "My name is Margaret Hale," she said. "I speak for Earth and for the colonies and for the dead who are many. Thank you for hearing me. For the dead who are many." I remember a few of the elders exchanging glances at that. The Corvani delegate tilted her crested head. It was an odd thing to say. We didn't know yet what it meant. We'd find out. HFY, who could not for the life of him keep his mandibles still, called out across the floor, And what does Earth want, grandmother? Speak plainly. Do you want grain, medicine, protection? We are generous to children. More laughter, smaller this time, the kind that follows a leader. Margaret Hale looked at him. Just looked. A long, plain, patient look, the look of a woman counting to 10 in her head, and then she answered the speaker instead, ignoring the vaca entirely. We want recognition, she said. A seat, a voice. We've come a long way to ask for it. A pause. And we've brought something to show you as proof of standing. That got their interest. Proof of standing is an old tradition in the Concord. When a young people petitions, they bring a gift, a treasure, a token of their worth, a rare element, a great work of art, the cure for some disease. The Drell once brought a singing stone that the Sethics still keep in their highest vault. The whole room leaned in a little despite themselves, curious now what this patched-up grandmother had hauled across the dark in her ugly little ship. Otterith rang the soft bell. Then show us, Margaret Hale of Earth, show us your proof of standing and we shall judge its worth. And here is where I have to slow down, because everything before this was prologue. Everything before this was just the joke. What came next is the part I came to tell you. She didn't bring it out herself. She turned her head just slightly toward the two young aides standing behind her. And the man, I'd later learn his name was Ray's, touched something at his wrist. The great doors at the back of the chamber didn't open. Instead, the floor did. There's a car garage in the center of the council floor, a lift platform used to bring up large exhibits, sealed beneath the crystal so smoothly you forget it's there. It hadn't been used in years. The humans must have arranged it with the chamber staff in advance, must have loaded something into it from their patched gray ship, and none of us had thought to ask what. A low hum filled the room, the seam of light appeared in the floor, and the platform began to rise. It rose slowly. There was a covering over the thing, a great sheet of that same dull gray draped to hide the shape beneath. As the platform climbed, the shape grew, and grew. It was big, bigger than a shuttle. The murmuring in the room changed, lost some of its laughter, picked up a thread of unease because whatever was under that sheet was large, and it had an odd, wrong outline, full of angles that didn't make sense. The platform locked into place, with a heavy sound that I felt in the floor through my own feet. Margaret Hale walked over to it, slowly, of course. She put one old hand on the edge of the covering, and she looked back at the council, and for the first time she smiled fully, and it was not a kind smile. It was the smile of a woman about to win an argument she had lost a great many people to. You've all heard, she said, the stories from the Tannic Reach, the frontier worlds going quiet, the colonies that stopped answering, the ships your scouts sent out there that never came home. A pause. You've been calling it the silence. Some of you think it's a malfunction. Some of you think it's a story we made up to frighten you into giving us a seat. The room had gone very still now, because she was right. They had been calling it the silence. It had been the whisper in the corridors for 2 cycles, the edge of the galaxy, the old human frontier and the colonies of 3 other young peoples, slowly going dark, world by world, signal by signal. The Concord had voted twice to send investigation fleets. Twice the fleets had been recalled before they ever launched, because the elder peoples did not, in truth, want to know. It isn't a malfunction, Margaret Hale said, and we didn't make it up. She pulled the covering off. I have tried many times to describe what was under that sheet. I always fail, but I'll try once more for you. It was a creature, or it had been. It was dead now, very dead, frozen in a stasis clamp, but you could see what it had been, and what it had been was wrong. Wrong in a way that reached into the oldest part of every brain in that room, the part older than language, the part that knows a predator when it sees one even if it has never seen that predator before. It was perhaps 4 times the height of a tall man. It had too many limbs and they were the wrong kind, not legs, not arms, but something between, hooked and bladed and built for only one thing. Its hide was a deep oily black that drank the beautiful colored light right out of the air, so that around it the chamber seemed to dim. It had no eyes that I could find. It didn't need them. And its head, if you could call it a head, was a wide flat wedge that split open into a mouth that ran the entire width of it, ringed all the way around, ring inside ring, with teeth. But it wasn't the size or the teeth that broke the room, it was the armor. Plating, layered, organic-grown armor, the same dull black, scored and pitted and scarred across every surface. And studded across that armor, embedded in it, fused into the creature's own grown shell, were things we recognized. Bits of metal, hull plate, the shattered remains of weapons, energy lance heads, kinetic slugs, a whole broken Drell disruptor still lodged between two plates of its hide like a thorn it hadn't bothered to remove. Our weapons, the Concord's weapons, the best the Elder Peoples had ever built, fired into this thing point blank by the look of it and stuck there, spent, useless, swallowed by its hide like pebbles thrown at a wall. A sound went through the chamber, not a scream, worse than a scream, a kind of low collective intake of breath, a recognition, as 1,000 of the oldest creatures in the galaxy all understood the same thing at the same moment. We have fought this. We have fought this and we lost, and we never even knew it had a shape. The Drell delegate stood up. The Drell never stand. Her crest had gone flat against her skull, the Drell sign of pure terror, and she said something in her own tongue that the translators refused to render, and then she said in trade speech very quietly, "Where did you find this?" Margaret Hale put her old hand on the dead creature's scarred flank, almost gently, the way you might touch the flank of a horse that had thrown you, and then carried you home anyway. "We didn't find it," she said, "we killed it." You could have heard a feather land in that chamber. HFY the Vaka, the one who'd called her grandmother, the one who'd done all the laughing, he was the one who broke the silence. And his voice had changed. The wet clicking confidence was gone out of it. He said, "That's not possible. We've the Concord has lost 3 scout cruisers in the Tannic Reach. Cruisers, our finest. They returned no images, no data, nothing but a final distress carrier with no message on it. And you expect this body to believe a human ship, that ship." "That ship," Margaret Hale agreed. "Yes." "Killed one of these. With what? With grain, with medicine." The old woman didn't answer him right away. She turned to the speaker, to Otterith, and she said, "May I show the body the rest?" "The rest," Otterith repeated. The bell voice had a crack in it now. "There's more on the ship," she said. "I didn't bring it all in. There wasn't room, a beat. And there are 41 names that go with it if the body would like to hear them. The crews we lost killing the first 3. The colonists we couldn't reach in time. The dead, who are many." She paused. "I told you I spoke for them too. 41. Across 3 colonies and a frontier that had been going dark for 2 cycles. 41 human dead, and 3 of these things killed for it. While the Concord's finest cruisers had gone out, met one, and come home with nothing but an empty distress signal and no images, because there had been no one left alive to take them. I looked at my master, Elder Vaso. The trill of mirth was long gone from him. His old eyes were fixed on that black scarred shape on the platform, and his 3 hands were gripping the arms of his seat, and he had gone the pale Inari gray of a person remembering that he is mortal. I looked across the whole chamber, that beautiful crystal room full of the oldest pride in the galaxy. Nobody was smiling. Not one of them. I have told you how the laughing stopped. Now I have to tell you what filled the space where it had been, because silence in a room that big doesn't stay silence for long. Something always rushes in to take its place. What rushed in that day was fear. And fear in old and proud people does an ugly thing. It doesn't make them humble, it makes them loud. HFY was the first to recover, because the Vaka are quickest to anger, and anger is the easiest mask for being afraid. He came up out of his seat, all glitter and teeth, one limb pointing at the black scarred shape on the platform. "This is a trick," he said, "a puppet, a thing they've built in that junkyard ship to frighten us into a vote. The humans want a seat, and they've made us a monster to buy it with. I won't be played by a grandmother and a corpse." It was a stupid thing to say. Everyone in the room could see it was stupid, because everyone in the room could feel that the thing on the platform was real. You can't fake the way a room dims around true darkness. You can't fake the weight that Black Hyde put on the air, but he said it anyway, because the alternative was admitting he was scared. Margaret Hale let him finish. She had a great talent for letting people finish. She waited until the echo of his voice died in the high-colored ceiling, and then she said, mildly, "Touch it." HFY stopped. "What?" "Touch it," she said again. "Come down here off your seat, walk across this floor you've ruled for 10,000 years and put your hand on it. Find the seam. Find the join where we glued our trick together." She stepped back from the body, opening a space, a clear invitation. "I'll wait. I'm good at waiting. You all watched me do it earlier." Nobody moved. That, more than anything, was when the room truly turned. Because the challenge sat there in the open and not one of the 12 would take it. Not the Vaka, who'd thrown all the stones. Not the Drell, still standing, crest still flat. Not the great mossback elders in their tanks, who shifted in their warm silt and said nothing. The most powerful beings in the galaxy, and not one of them would walk 40 paces across a floor to touch a dead thing. Because some old animal part of every one of them knew that the dead thing was the real one, and they were the small ones now. The old woman nodded slowly, as if a point had been made without her having to make it. "That's what I thought," she said. There was no cruelty in it. That was the terrible part. She wasn't enjoying this. She just looked tired and old and a little sad, like a doctor who has run out of gentle ways to say the word. The speaker, Ottereth, found the bell voice again, though it shook. "Margaret Hale," the Sethic said, if this is true, if what you have shown us is true, then why have you brought it here as a petition? Why not as a warning freely given? Why make recognition the price of telling us that we are in danger?" And the whole chamber held still for the answer, because it was the right question, the only question, and we all wanted to know. Margaret Hale was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her dry, low voice had something underneath it now, something she'd been holding all this while. "Because we did warn you," she said, freely, 3 times. She let that land. 2 cycles ago, when the first colony went quiet, we sent word, a formal notice, through the proper channels to this Concord. We told you something was killing our worlds out past the Tannic Reach, and we asked for help. Do you know what answer we received? Nobody spoke. "We received a form," she said, "a very polite form. It informed us that as a non-recognized people we had no standing to petition the Concord for military aid, and that our notice had been logged for the records of the appropriate subcommittee." A small, dry sound that wasn't a laugh. "A subcommittee, while Havern Colony died, 11,000 people. We sent word again when it took Brevik Station. Same form. We sent word a 3rd time when it took the relay at Cold Harbor, and 41 of our people died trying to hold a line long enough to evacuate the rest." Her voice did not rise. It got quieter, which was worse. "Same form." I felt my master flinch beside me, because it was true. I had filed some of those forms myself. I had stamped no standing on a notice from a dying world because that was the rule, and I had not thought about it again, because the people it concerned were not real to me. They were monkeys who wanted a chair. "So we stopped asking," Margaret Hale said. "And we learned to kill them ourselves, because no one was coming. That ship out there," she tilted her head toward the wall, toward the patched gray thing on the docking screens, and now everyone understood the patches, every welded mismatched scar of it. "That ship has killed 3 of these. It came home looking like that because it came home. It is the ugliest ship in your beautiful harbor, and there is not one of your gleaming cruisers I would trade it for, because mine has crews that are still breathing." She turned back to the council, to all of them. "You ask why recognition is the price. It isn't the price. It's the point. I'm not here to beg you to save us. We are saving ourselves. I'm here to tell you that the thing eating my frontier is moving inward toward yours, and that when it reaches you, and it will, you are going to want to fight it alongside the only people in this galaxy who already know how. And we're not cruel, we'll come when you call. A pause, and now it came, the thing under the voice, the iron under the tiredness. But I will be damned if I will let you call us children with one breath and ask us to die for you with the next. So, a seat, a voice, recognition, not as charity, as the simple fact that we have earned it in blood while you filed it in a drawer. The chamber did not make a sound. And I understood finally what she had meant when she walked in. I speak for the dead, who are many. She hadn't been speaking in poetry. She had been reading us a bill, and now she'd shown us the total. It might have ended there. It probably should have. A vote, a long silence, a grudging seat granted to the patched-up grandmother and her dead monster. That's how it ends in the polite version, the one they teach in the academies now. But that isn't how it ended, because the monster wasn't quite as dead as we thought. I have gone over this part 1,000 times. The stasis clamp on the platform had been damaged, scarred, like everything the humans owned, held together past the point any of our engineers would have trusted. And whether it was the heat of the chamber or the long flight or simple bad luck, I will never know. But as the silence stretched, there came a sound from the platform. A click. A long, slow, grinding click deep in the black hide. And the great ringed mouth, the one that ran the whole width of that wedge-shaped head, opened. An inch. 2. The dead thing wasn't dead. Or it was dying so slowly that dying and living looked the same in a creature like that, and one bladed limb, the size of a man, dragged itself a hand's width across the platform with a screech of metal that I will hear on my own deathbed. The chamber broke. I have never seen panic like it, and I hope never to again. 1,000 of the proudest beings in creation, and in one heartbeat they were a stampede. Elders fell from their seats. The Drell delegate simply collapsed where she stood. The galleries above became a screaming crush toward the doors. HFY, the brave Vaka, the joke teller, went over the back of his own seat and was gone, just gone, into the crowd. My master, Elder Vaso, grabbed my arm with all 3 hands hard enough to bruise and tried to pull me toward the exit. And I am ashamed to say I went with him. 2 steps, 3. Because I was 22 and the oldest part of my brain had taken the wheel and it was screaming run. And in the middle of all of it, in the eye of that stampede, 3 people did not move. The 2 young human aides, Reyes and the woman, had already moved, but not away. Toward. The woman had a tool in her hand, a heavy, ugly thing, already up and bracing the failing clamp. Reyes had put himself between the platform and the chamber, between the thing and the fleeing galaxy, and in his hands was a weapon I hadn't seen him carry, short and brutal and plainly used, and he was aiming it with the bored steadiness of a man who has done this on worse days than this one. And Margaret Hale, the old woman, the grandmother, she hadn't run, she hadn't even flinched. She had simply turned around to face the thing that was waking up an arm's length from her, this small, tired, ancient woman, and she put one hand flat against its scarred black flank. Not to fight it, there was no fighting it with a hand, but to feel it, to know. And then she said over her shoulder in that same flat, dry, steady voice, not raised even now. "Clamps gone, Reyes sleep it." And Reyes shot it, once. A short, contained, professional sound, nothing like our cruiser's great roaring lances, a sound like a tool, like a thing done for the 10,000th time. The bladed limb stopped. The ringed mouth sagged. The slow click died. Then the woman with the heavy tool reset the clamp with 2 quick movements, slammed something home, and stepped back, and the 3 of them stood there in the eye of the storm while the whole galaxy screamed and fled around them. And not one human face showed anything at all except a kind of tired, patient, terrible competence. They'd done it before. You could see they'd done it before. That was the whole thing, right there in 3 seconds, plainer than any speech. While you ran, we worked. We always have. We're just better at it than you because we had to be. The chamber took a long time to settle. The speaker had to ring the order bell for what felt like an hour. People crept back to their seats, would not meet each other's eyes, would not meet the humans' eyes. There was a smell in the room now, the sour smell of a great many proud people having been very frightened in public, and everyone knew everyone else could smell it, And that, I think, was the moment the old galaxy ended and a new one started. Not when she pulled off the sheet. When they ran and she didn't. Margaret Hale waited, of course, for them to settle. She was still good at waiting. She had not, I noticed, even taken her hand off the creature's flank during the panic, and she only took it off now slowly, and looked at her own palm for a moment as if reading something there. When the room was quiet, she turned to Otterith, and there was nothing in her voice now. No triumph, no anger, just the plain end of a long road. "I'll ask once more," she said, "and then I'll go either way because we have a frontier to hold and I'm wasting daylight standing here. A seat, a voice, yes or no." The speaker, the courteous Sethic, the builder of the most beautiful room ever made, looked down at the small old woman standing beside the monster that had broken his Concord in 3 seconds and a single word. He did not ring the bell. He bowed. The full bow, the deep one the Sethic give only at the joining of equals, that I had never in my life seen given to a young people. "Yes," said Otterith, "and may the records show that the Concord of 12 peoples this day became the Concord of 13. And may the records show," the bell voice steadied, found something like dignity again, "that it was offered late, far too late, and accepted with shame." "Late's fine," said Margaret Hale. "We're used to late." And then, because she was, after everything, not a cruel woman, "Thank you for hearing me." She nodded to Rays and the woman. The platform began slowly to sink back into the floor, taking the black scarred shape down with it, taking our weapons-turned thorns and our shattered pride down with it, into the dark beneath the crystal. And the 3 humans turned and walked back across that vast bright floor single file, the way they'd come, the old woman in front with her stiff, slow steps. And this time halfway across she stopped, and she looked up again, at the light, at the gold and the rose and the pale green that has no name drifting through the high windows of the most beautiful room ever built. And the small smile came back to her old mouth, the one she'd worn walking in, the one we'd all thought was the smile of a slow, lost, simple thing. I understand it now. It wasn't simple at all. It was the smile of a woman who had crossed an ocean of dead worlds and a galaxy of contempt, who had buried 41 of her own and filed 3 notices into an empty drawer, and who had finally, at the end of all of it, walked into the throne room of the people who'd called her a child, and found, waiting there, one nice thing worth looking up at. She'd earned the light. That was the smile. I came all this way and the light is real and now it's ours too. Then she walked out. The tall doors closed. The ugly little gray ship lifted from the harbor an hour later and turned its patched and scarred face back toward the frontier, toward the dark that was coming inward, to do the work that no one else would do until they were forced to. I'm an old man myself now. Older in my people's count than Margaret Hale ever got to be. She's been gone a long time. The humans bury their envoys fast and don't make statues, which I think she'd have liked. I have her seat's records in my keeping. I asked for the duty years ago and no one else wanted it. I read them sometimes. People ask me when they hear I was there, "What did you learn that day in the crystal chamber? What's the lesson?" And they always expect me to say something about strength, about the monster, the weapons, the patched ship that outvalued our whole gleaming fleet. They want it to be a story about who can fight. But that's not what I learned. The monster was never the point. The point was 1,000 of the oldest, proudest creatures in the galaxy ran for the doors, and an old woman put her bare hand on the thing instead, because somebody had to know, and she'd long ago stopped waiting for somebody else to be that person. That's the whole of it. That's the lesson I'd give you if you came all this way to ask an old man. We laughed at them because they were young. We should have been terrified that they were young, that a people could grow up that hard, that fast, in the cold and the silence with no one coming, and walk into our beautiful room still able to look up at the light and smile. They sent us a grandmother. It was the most dangerous thing they could possibly have sent, and we were too busy laughing to see it, right up until the moment nobody in that room was laughing at all, And most of us, if we're honest, have never quite started again.